Number six of early childhood, 3 to 6. We're still talking about psychosocial development. So psychosocial development is the emotional and the social development of kids. The last slide, we were talking about self-concept. And this slide is specific to Erikson, the stage of Erikson's model. You may remember back to the chapter on theory. The idea, according to Erikson, is that as we go through the different stages of life, we have some sort of crisis that we have to resolve, and then out of that crisis becomes a virtue. And according to Erikson, this stage of life, the crisis is between initiative and guilt. So if you think about 3-year-olds, they're always trying to do it themselves. They're always trying to do it themselves, right? What they want to do, I think that's the previous one. That was the previous stage. This one is what they want to do versus the rules, right? So it's kind of the same thing, but it's the that they have to reconcile the desire to do something, right, versus the desire for approval. So if they do something, will they be rewarded or will they be punished? They're learning how to control their sense of self versus if I try it and I fail. They're what they call a division of the exuberant personality versus the adult. So this is a stage of life where kids are they're full of life. They're doing, and then the crisis is, how do the adults respond to them? Do the adults respond to them and shame them for when they make a mess, for when they fail at something, because going back to this idea of self, that they have this ideal self that they can do whatever they want, they're capable, this grand view of who they are? Does the environment criticize them or punish them or make them feel guilty? Or does it respond in a way that's appropriate and helps them grow? And out of this crisis between the initiative of wanting to do and the terrible feelings for when they fail comes what is called purpose. And purpose is the courage to envision and pursue a goal without too much inhibition, without being too afraid that they're not going to be successful. Like, I can try new things. This is, that a child will try new things without being really afraid of messing up or getting in trouble for the mess up, right? Because obviously kids are having to learn, they have to learn what the rules of the culture, and when they make mistakes, they need to know that they've made a mistake. But how we respond to the mistakes that they make will influence according to Erikson, at least according to the stage and development, this is going to critically influence how a child feels about themselves and if they pursue or attempt to do the next thing, right? Or do they internalize some sense of guilt and a sense of failure, or do they keep trying? Also made reference in this chapter is the notion of emotions, and how this is the stage where a child is developing what we would call social emotions. Social emotions are the kinds of emotions that we can only experience when we recognize that we have done something against the cultural norm. So like guilt and shame and pride, right? If I don't know what the rules are and I don't know that I have broken the rules, then I can't feel any shame, right? Because I don't know that I've done anything. And guilt is guilt. I'm trying to think of another textbook. They talk about socially engaging versus socially opposition. But guilt is one of those emotions that we feel when we've broken the rules of a group, and we feel like and we feel bad about breaking the rules of the group. And interestingly, guilt is a social figure. I can't remember the word, but it's a socially engaging. When I feel guilty, I'm likely to turn towards the group and somehow try to reconcile, make myself feel better by doing good. But again, the point is that we can't feel guilt or pride, and pride is a similar one, because pride means I understand that I have done good, so I have to know the rules of the group to know, and I have to have a sense of self-awareness to know that I have done good relative to the expectations of the group, right? So you see why we call these social emotions. This is also a time, and this is made reference several times in this chapter, where kids who have developed a better emotional regulation. So I think it's some other chapter we'll talk about what it means to be emotionally intelligent. To be emotionally intelligent means I recognize my emotions, I have some ability to manage my emotions, and I know about expressing them as appropriate, and I'm able to read your emotions. And so some of these things begin to emerge around this developmental stage, and the children who can master that the most quickly and the most successfully will be the ones that are favored by their peer group, right? They'll have more friends, they'll do better. And the irony, though, is that when we are favored by our peer group, we have more opportunity to learn the rules of the group, which then means now I know these rules better, and now I'm even better at now that I know the rules better, which means now I'm even better at following the rules, and I get more opportunities to engage with the group. Okay, there is a lot on this slide about gender and gender identity, right? I could teach a whole 16 weeks on the topic of gender and gender identity, but for our purposes, what this is really, what this slide is about acknowledging that in the preschool years, this is when a kid's idea about who they are in terms of if they're male or female is sort of coming to fruition, right? The difference, and hopefully I've discussed this in another chapter somewhere, but sex and gender are not the same thing. Sex, that term refers to how my body is, the parts, or I like to say what you got in your pants. It's your chromosomes, it's your hormones, it's the way your body is structured. Gender is how you interact. So gender is the way you are in the world. Do you act in ways that are masculine, or do you act in ways that are feminine? For most people, in our culture, the assumption is that if I have a female body, if I have a body that has the reproductive parts associated with the female, I will act in a feminine way. But these are different ideas. The same thing is if I have a body associated with the male role in reproduction, I will ask in a, quote, masculine way. Gender norms are the term that we give for ways that are traditionally associated with masculine or feminine. So the gender norms in our culture is women are the nurturers, women are the cookers and the cleaners, they are the PTO moms, men are the instrumentalists, they are the disciplinarians, they are the wage earners. Those are really traditional gender norms. Gender roles is another word of basically saying the same thing. That the role is that woman is the nurturer and the homemaker, and that men are the disciplinarian and the wage earner, right? Gender typing is when a person, actually I was trying to look for a good distinction in your textbook and it doesn't really have one. I should have taken the word out. But gender typing is when a person gets typed and associated that you are female, so these are the ways that you're supposed to be, right? Sometimes in my sociology class I talk about putting people in a box, right? Because the way your structure is, you go in the male box. Because the way your structure is, you go in the female box. That's sort of what we mean. Gender stereotypes are a very broad term given to the ways and the norms that we assign to males and females, right? Very generalizable term. One's gender identity, and that's really what we should be talking about more than these other terms, because I bet you already know these other terms, is when a child figures out or comes to identify themselves or think of themselves as a male or a female. And believe it or not, and I'm a little sassy here, some people don't identify their body. They don't feel like the way they're supposed to interact in the world is consistent, and I say supposed, is consistent with the way their body is. This is what we call gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is considered a cognitive phenomena. There we go. A cognitive phenomena that a person's body may have the reproductive parts of being a male, but the way they feel about themselves, the way they want to be, in the world is not consistent with their body, and this is commonly what we call transgender. But trans, right? So it's not a perfect association, but it's the idea that my body and my identity are inconsistent. I don't want to talk too much about that. I really want to talk more about the theories of gender identity. Gender identity being like, how does this come to be? How does a child learn about what is the process, or how do we explain how a child goes from not understanding the concept of male or female to not only understanding that concept, but identifying with identifying as male or as female, or in some cases not. And I think it's now 10 minutes, so I'm going to stop. In the next lecture, I want to talk specifically about just these gender identity theories.